here's the ITV Lunchtime News.
The health service in its sickest state yet, the new figures showing an NHS struggling to survive. Across England, waits for an emergency ambulance, a routine operation, and even some cancer treatments are all up, hitting record highs, while staff morale is down.
People are struggling and people need a bed, but it's like they're not paying attention, so something needs to be done about it.
This lunchtime, it was announced the Health Secretary is meeting the RCN to talk about the nurses' strike, the next hurdle for the health service. Also ahead. Missing in Spain, the rugby player Levi Davis's mother flies to Barcelona to try to find her son. 2 trials Hancock, how the public has responded to the former Health Secretary's stint in the jungle so far. And the little place with the big claim to fame. It's got the UK's tallest Christmas tree.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. How much worse can it get? Pretty much all the latest figures from NHS England show the health service is breaking records for all the wrong reasons. Waiting lists for routine treatments up. A&E waits of more than 12 hours up. Delays in getting some cancer treatment up. The average wait for an ambulance outside London, you've guessed it, up. In October, the average wait for emergency calls, that includes stroke patients, was 1 hour, 1 minute. The target is 18 minutes. Morale, though, among staff is down. With a nurses' strike and the winter looming, how will the NHS cope? And what is the government saying it will do to try to improve this ever-worsening crisis? Danny Sinha has the details.
The health service has been on life support for some time. Operations cancelled, not to mention staff shortages. It's patients, though, who are bearing the brunt. Michael's girlfriend Paige has been in and out of hospital with unexplained seizures for the last couple of months. The longest she's had to wait to see an A&E doctor was 16 hours.
It's quite shocking, to be honest, because you know there's a lot of people suffering enough as it is. And they're just leaving people in the waiting room. And yes, they do observations and everything every so often, but people are struggling and people need a bed. But it's like they're not paying attention, so something needs to be done about it.
And the figures speak for themselves. According to data from NHS England, in October, over 43,000 people waited longer than 12 hours to be seen in A&E, up more than a third on the month before. The highest number since records began in 2010, while fewer than 70% of patients in England were seen within 4 hours, against a target of 95%, the worst performance on record. And ambulances outside London took an average of over an hour in October to respond to emergency calls such as strokes, well above the target of 18 minutes. Hospitals have been pushed to their limits since the pandemic, but with winter in full swing, things are set to get worse.
We are all the time busy, and the thing that we are struggling is that moving on to the patient onto the next level, which is into the wards, and that's how it builds up more pressure, because that's the bottleneck at the moment, and we're not able to send the patients to the ward.
The government claims they have put in huge amounts of money into the NHS, setting up diagnostic and surgical centres so people can be seen quicker. But with nurses' strikes happening within weeks across England, Scotland and Wales, it's feared all parts of the NHS will follow suit, leaving an already stretched health service on its knees. Danny Sinha, ITV News.
I'm joined now by Miriam Deacon from NHS Providers, the body that represents NHS trusts and helps them deliver patient care. Welcome. Good afternoon to you. What is your advice to people right now? It feels like we're at the stage where the only advice is do not get ill.
Well, today's figures do show the strain on NHS services across the piece. As you said in your package, we've seen the busiest October for A&E on record, and regrettably that has meant more people waiting for longer than we would want for an ambulance response or indeed to be seen or admitted in A&E. But the NHS is very much open for business, and it's really important that people do know if they're in crisis, in emergency, that they can dial 999. There are also other options if your needs aren't urgent. So you might want to consider dialing 111 or speaking to your GP, given that A&E departments will be so busy and we
so
expect them to continue to be.
you think you might be having a stroke and you dial 999 and the average wait time for an ambulance to get to you is over an hour with a target time of 18 minutes. It doesn't instill any confidence, does it, at what would be a very terrifying time for somebody?
Absolutely. These figures are really worrying. They demonstrate the spike in demand we've seen since the pandemic across services, and they demonstrate the strain on NHS staff as well as of course, for patients. And the solutions to these problems really will be thinking about investment, not just in urgent and emergency care, where we're seeing these extreme pressures, but actually in other services that people can access more quickly. So that might be in community-based health services, it might be in mental health services, and we certainly need to see much more money going into social care so that people can be supported to leave hospital.
But investment in the middle of an economic crisis isn't a given, is it? The government's already said it's put money in. Look, we've got the winter looming, the winter proper looming, and also this potential prospect of a nurses' strike. November's figures will be worse than October's, won't they?
It is possible. Trust leaders have told us that they are expecting the worst winter in their careers. Government has put money into the NHS, but we need to have a really serious conversation with government about what inflation will do to NHS budgets, how demand has risen and changed over the years, and what we need to do to plan much further ahead to bring in doctors, nurses.
Any hope,
to
Miriam,
recruit
that
and
conversation will lead to solutions, financial solutions, and the recruitment and retention crisis that we're seeing?
Well, we hope so. It absolutely needs to, and we'll know more next week when we hear more from government in their fiscal event on Thursday.
Yeah, next week, a week today. Miriam Deacon, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, join me now from Westminster is our political correspondent, Harry Horton. What exactly has the government said today about these latest figures from NHS England?
Well, the government's in a really, really difficult position. I think there's widespread acceptance that the service provided by the NHS at the moment isn't good enough. It's not what the government would want. And we know that things are more than likely going to get worse in the next few weeks because of the pressures of COVID and flu this winter, because also of strikes that we're going to see in the next few weeks. And there's been a meeting today between the Health Secretary and leaders at the Royal College of Nursing. I'm told that it's a routine meeting, not necessarily about these strikes. The government would argue that these strikes are going to make pressures on the NHS worse this winter. The Royal College of Nursing would argue that chronic low pay is the reason that we're in this position in the first place. As you say, we've got the autumn statement next week. The government has made noises that NHS funding will be ring-fenced, but as we've heard, that there is pressure from the NHS for more money to be spent. The NHS is in a really difficult position here. The government is in a tricky position, and there's no easy solutions really to get out of this crisis.
Harry Horton, thank you very much. The mother of the missing rugby player Levi Davis has flown to Spain to try to find her son. The 24-year-old former Bath player was last seen outside an Irish pub in Barcelona at the end of October. He's also known for his TV appearances on Celebrity X Factor and Celebs Go Dating. Our reporter Max Walsh is in the city. Concern growing for this missing player.
Yeah, that's right. And he's been missing for 12 days now. As you said, he was last seen leaving this Irish pub behind me. He was caught on CCTV walking out wearing a white T-shirt and black rucksack and turning left onto this street. But since then, there have been no confirmed sightings. But having said that, there have been multiple potential sightings of him, reports, bits of information that have been passed on and sent to the family. And that really is one of the main reasons why the family have decided to fly out today, to get to the bottom of whether these potential sightings are actually him. At the moment, they are meeting with police and other authorities to get the latest on this investigation, which is being conducted by Spanish authorities here in Barcelona, but it only started 2 days ago. The other main reason they're here is to really raise the profile of this case and to speak to as much Spanish local media as possible. I'm on the street where Levi was last seen, but there are no posters or flyers with his name or face on. The family are really keen to change that, to get people talking about Levi once again, in the hope that they can get to the truth of what happened to him over the last 12 days.
Max Walsh, thank you very much. Thank you. Russia says it has begun the withdrawal of troops from around the major city of Hossain in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials in Kyiv say at the moment they can't confirm the movement of troops and have raised the prospect the announcement is a trap.
Інформаційному просторі сьогодні дуже багато радощів.
President Zelensky used his nightly address to urge caution. He said the opposition does not make what he described as gestures of goodwill. Here, a man who set fire to his partner 21 years ago has today been jailed for life for her murder. 58-year-old Stephen Craig attacked mother of two, Jacqueline Kirk, in 1998. He's already served 15 years in jail for the attack, but was then charged with her murder following her death. Rupert Evelyn is at Bristol Crown Court, where that sentencing has just taken place. Rupert, an unusual case. Take us through what was said in court, what the judge said.
Unusual and absolutely horrifying. Stephen Craig's actions towards Jackie Kirk. He poured petrol on her, he set light to her. She was left with life-changing injuries way back towards the end of the 90s, and she died 3 years ago. Now, this is an unusual case because Mr. Craig has now been given 2 life sentences following 2 separate court cases. And the judge was very clear today, handing down his sentence, that he was going to prison for a long time.
The first aspect is the level of sadism and extreme nature of the attack, culminating in the fire on the road trip, which takes it above the factors built into a 30-year starting point. It was just so callous and so brutal. The second is the physical and mental suffering and terrible scarring that Jackie has endured for 21 years when she tried to make the best of what was left of her life.
We heard in court today what was a victim impact statement from Jackie that was made after the petrol was poured on her back in the 90s. She described the horrifying, life-changing injuries she had to live with and how difficult her life had become. She said people were shocked to see her, and sometimes she simply didn't go out because she didn't want to be looked at.
Rupert Evelyn, thank you very much. Next this lunchtime, and so it begins. Last night, the public voted that Matt Hancock do a second trial on I'm a Celebrity, while the shock in Westminster and in the jungle continues that a serving MP has gone down under while Parliament is sitting. Katie Cole has the latest on Hancock's hard time.
Oh, you've got to hold your breath for a long time.
Yeah, you do.
Hold your breath, Matt Hancock. There could be more of these. He's only just arrived in the jungle, and tonight, thanks to the public vote, he'll be taking on his second Bush Tucker trial. The former Health Secretary's arrival brought genuine shock and surprise among campmates.
I don't know what to say.
While it was hugs and handshakes at first, it wasn't long before true feelings were shown.
It's hard to kind of like push your views aside. It really is, because of the many people whose lives have been affected.
You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, my mum was in hospital and I wasn't allowed to see her, and I thought she was going to die. If I'd have lost my mum, I would go. And I feel a little bit selfish, you know, just kind of, you know, everyone was so nice to him, and I was like, Jesus, you know. But then, of course, what are we going to do? I don't want to spoil this experience for myself.
Matt Hancock's decision to head down under has seen him stripped of the Conservative Party whip. So just why is he doing it? A question put to him by ITV presenter Charlene White.
Honest truth is because there's so few ways in which politicians can show that we're human beings. So I just thought it'd be good to see that. And I like, I've got a sense of adventure.
But it's an adventure he shouldn't be on, according to colleagues back home.
Politicians demonstrate by helping their constituents and debating in Parliament, maybe with some humour, important matters that matter to their constituents. That's how we show we're human and in touch, and so I think he's made the wrong choice.
Every time somebody like Matt Hancock, who is a failed politician, travels around the world to take part in a reality TV show, it damages all politics, and I think that is a shameful thing to do.
His inclusion in the show has proved controversial, and at moments it may be awkward to watch. But with 9 million of us tuning in at its peak last night, it appears we can't help ourselves. Katie Cole, ITV News.
Still to come, gearing up for the World Cup final. We're in Auckland ahead of the England women's clash with New Zealand. And scaling new heights, we join the team lighting up Britain's biggest Christmas tree. First, Rishi Sunak will meet the Irish Prime Minister in Blackpool later this afternoon. Mr Sunak is expected to tell the British-Irish summit that he's determined to deliver the restoration of power sharing in Northern Ireland. He'll also meet Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon for the first time since becoming Prime Minister. Our political correspondent Romilly Weeks is also there and joins me now. Lots for them to discuss then.
Yeah, absolutely, Nina. And it's significant that Rishi Sunak is coming to the British-Irish Council here in a very windy Blackpool in person. You have to go as far back as Gordon Brown to find the last British Prime Minister who did that. It's quite a different approach to Liz Truss, who you may remember said that the best stance with Nicola Sturgeon was to ignore her. And on Northern Ireland too, which hasn't had a power-sharing government since February, there are signs of a new tack. This is what the Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris had to say this morning.
Hopefully it's to cement a new and very, very friendly relationship with Ireland. There's been some frosty times in the past based around us leaving the European Union, but now everybody wants to look forward, move on. And so this is the first time the Prime Minister would have been to a British-Irish Council in a decade. So it's a really important moment.
The Irish government is hoping for a new impetus from Rishi Sunak on sorting out the Northern Ireland Protocol, that vexed part of the Brexit deal, which puts trade barriers between Northern Ireland and Britain. Boris Johnson took a very hard line on that. There is tentative signs that under Rishi Sunak that most sides are a little bit more optimistic.
All right, Romilly Weeks, thank you very much. Thank you. The Britain's Got Talent judge, David Walliams, has apologised for making disrespectful comments about contestants during breaks in filming the show. The comedian was reportedly recorded making derogatory remarks and sexually explicit comments about people auditioning. He said they were private conversations never intended to be shared. Next, can the England rugby team emulate the success of the national football team this summer and win another international trophy? England take on bitter rivals New Zealand in the climax of the Women's Rugby World Cup on Saturday. The Red Roses are bidding to win their third World Cup, but it won't be easy against the defending champions. Dan Rivers is in New Zealand and sent this a little earlier.
Well, England have held their final press conference before the big day on Saturday, exuding confidence. The head coach, Simon Middleton, suggesting that all the pressure is in fact on the host nation, New Zealand.
It can work both ways, you know, it can inspire you or it can get on top of you. And, you know, we've played in front of lots of big crowds and lots of sort of hostile crowds, you know, and we've come through every time.
No major surprises as they announced their final lineup. Holly Aitchison is now at number 12, replacing Tatiana Hurd, perhaps suggesting a slightly different game plan to the matches against Australia and Canada. But overall, the feeling was very relaxed.
I think people are now starting to wake up with it and go, wow, like this is a great sport. And I think it's only going to kick on and get better and better, and the profile and the fan base is going to keep growing, which is exactly where it should be.
And any message to the Black Ferns?
Yeah, bring it on.
It is expected to be a record crowd. It's a sellout at Eden Park. 40,000 people will be in the stands watching this game. Among them, some of the family and friends of the Red Roses, but they will be heavily outnumbered by the Kiwis. And now England is hoping that they will be returning on Sunday with that World Cup. The match kicks off early on Saturday morning on ITV at 6:30.
Dan Rivers in Auckland there. England's men are into the T20 Cricket World Cup final after beating India by 10 wickets. Openers Jos Buttler and Alex Hales got a record-breaking unbroken stand of 170 and overcame the huge support for India at the Adelaide Oval. England now play Pakistan in Sunday's final. Finally, how a tiny place in Sussex has top-trumped Trafalgar Square and bagged this year's tallest Christmas tree in the UK. Standing nearly 40 metres tall and needing 2,000 low-energy lights, the big switch-on will signal the start of the festive season proper. Here's Sharon Thomas.
It's not how I'll be putting my own tree up, but then mine isn't going to be 120 feet high.
I don't know if it really helps with putting the lights up at home. It's a bit of a different... It doesn't really translate, I don't think. I can't fit a cherry picker in the living room.
The UK's tallest Christmas tree will be adorning the gardens at Wakehurst, a National Trust property in Sussex. Team Tree are busy scaling the giant redwood, the height of 8 stacked double-decker buses, meticulously checking everything. Twice, of course, ready for the big switch-on of more than 1,800 energy-efficient lights.
We had so much bad weather in the last few weeks. We're just checking where all the plugs have been joined up to make sure they're not soaked and they're still going to work.
And as with many Christmas success stories, the planning starts in the summer.
Obviously we actually start work on this back in late August, early September, when we're getting everything out, checking all the bulbs, making sure it's all ready to go. But this week, when we get the Christmas tree lights up, that's the beginning of the festive season for us.
The 37-metre tall tree is almost double the size of the Norway spruce in Trafalgar Square and will illuminate the night sky over Sussex 2 weeks today. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
That's all from me and the Lunchtime team. Bye-bye.